Watched my wife kiss my boss for 35 minutes. But what happened next destroyed everyone. Greetings, my dear viewer. This is a channel about marital infidelity and about the consequences when one spouse starts to cheat on the other. If you, as well as I do, support true family values and condemn cheating, then subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's get started. At 47, I thought I understood the depths of human deception. 3 decades of experience in corporate strategy had taught me to read people, to anticipate their moves, to see through carefully constructed facades. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the soul-crushing betrayal that was about to unfold before my eyes. For the last 35 minutes, I had silently watched my captivating wife move gracefully across the ballroom floor, her steps so impeccably timed that as the clock struck midnight, she was positioned at the farthest point from me, surrounded by her affluent, pretentious circle. She seemed more like a prized masterpiece being passed around at an exclusive auction, kissed, touched, and admired by the executives from my firm. My boss, an entitled heir who had done little to earn his vast fortune, seemed especially taken with her. None of this was surprising. For the past 3 years, the company's New Year's Eve celebration had followed this same humiliating pattern. The first time, I chalked it up to the intoxicating effects of champagne. But last year had left no room for doubt, compelling me to make meticulous plans. You see, when you've lived long enough, you learn that some betrayals cut so deep they transform you completely. A light tug at my sleeve drew my attention. Turning, I found Serafina, my wife's closest confidant and partner in crime, standing beside me. "Happy New Year, Christopher," she chirped, leaning in for her customary half-hearted kiss on the cheek. I barely acknowledged the gesture, stepping back to meet her gaze, usually brimming with smugness as if her aristocratic lineage granted her some innate superiority. Serafina's expression tonight carried an unusual mix of discomfort and pity. "Christopher, don't be so stern," she said softly, her tone almost pleading. "It's just a silly tradition. She's only sharing a few harmless kisses. She'll come back soon and everything will be fine. You know she loves you." I scrutinized her, utterly unimpressed by the platitude. Have you ever had someone try to gaslight you while you're watching your world crumble? The audacity was breathtaking. Serafina pressed on, her voice turning consolatory. "She does love you, Christopher. Valentina's just vivacious and spontaneous. She thrives on socializing with people who share her energy. You're the quiet, thoughtful one. She needs that balance. Spending time with them only makes her value you more." A bitter laugh escaped me. Is that so? Was that what she was doing under the mistletoe at the Christmas party? Because I saw her kissing every senior executive in her office, and now here she is again, dancing, kissing, and cozying up to my colleagues. So by your logic, the more she gets close to everyone else, the more she appreciates me? Serafina flinched. "You're misinterpreting." "Am I?" I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. "Does her appreciation include making out with Vincent, the guy she knows I can't stand? Is this her unique way of showing love, since she's well aware of how much I despise him?" Serafina's face turned crimson as she looked away. "Christopher, please. I know this is difficult, but—" "For the first time in 8 years, Serafina," I said, cutting her off, "I actually understand. I really do." Without waiting for her response, I strode to our table and retrieved a large, elegantly wrapped package from my briefcase. Taking off my wedding ring, I tied it securely to the ribbon at the top of the gift. Then I turned back to Serafina, my expression calm and resolute. The moment I'd been planning for months had finally arrived. Give this to Valentina when she's done charming the crowd. Wish her a happy new year from me. I hope 2025 brings her everything she truly deserves. "Christopher, wait." Serafina grabbed my arm, her voice desperate. "Don't leave." "I'll bring her back. She's just had too much champagne again. She needs you to take her home." "No, Serafina, she doesn't." My tone was steady, almost serene. "She's been here all day preparing for this spectacle. She has her own room, her own car, and more than enough admirers to look after her. And you? You've known all along, haven't you? You've lied to me before." "Not this time." Before she could respond, I turned and walked away. As I exited the ballroom, I nodded briefly at Margaret, the HR director who was standing with her towering husband. Margaret had spent the afternoon assisting me as my boss and others made their arrangements at the hotel, a plan that had involved Valentina in a lavish suite. I had documented everything, and so had Margaret. Soon the board of directors would see it too. As Christopher disappeared into the night, Margaret and her husband moved purposefully toward Valentina. Meanwhile, Serafina pushed her way through the throng of admirers surrounding her friend. When she finally reached Valentina, she thrust the garishly wrapped package toward her. "Christopher left this for you," Serafina said, her voice tight with strain. "He's gone. He watched everything tonight, and when you started kissing everyone, he decided he'd had enough. He wanted you to have this." Valentina's lips curved into a confident smile. "Oh, Christopher," she said dismissively. "He's just sulking. I'll fix things when I get home. He always forgives me. Even when he's upset, he leaves me gifts." Ignoring Serafina's attempt to stop her, Valentina untied the ribbon. When the ring fell to the floor, her smile faltered. Vincent, who had been standing nearby, stooped to pick it up with a smirk. "Isn't this your husband's wedding ring?" he asked mockingly, holding it up for her to see. Valentina stared at the ring, her confusion growing, and hastily unwrapped the box. "It's heavy," she muttered, giving it a shake. As she broke the seal, its contents spilled onto the floor. Glossy photographs scattered across the tiles like fallen leaves of destruction. A hush fell over the room. Valentina, her gown pooling around her, knelt to gather the photos, her hands trembling. As the faces in the images came into focus, her gasp of shock quickly turned into a horrified scream that seemed to echo from the depths of her soul. Serafina, pale and visibly shaken, crouched beside her, trying to steady her. Nearby, Vincent picked up one of the photos, his expression darkening as he recognized himself. "What the hell, Valentina?" he snarled, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. More eyes fell to the photos, revealing compromising images of Valentina with Vincent and others. The tension in the room snapped like a wire under too much pressure. One woman slapped her husband with a resounding crack, following it with a sharp jab to his chest. "So this is why you're never home?" she shouted, grabbing a handful of photos to show to other wives. "You all might want to take a look at these. Plenty of familiar faces here." The ballroom descended into absolute chaos. Valentina, overwhelmed by the magnitude of her exposed deceptions, fainted, collapsing unceremoniously onto Vincent's polished shoe. Serafina frantically tried to revive her as the crowd buzzed with scandal and accusation. But the damage had already been done. Far from the chaos, Christopher walked away without a glance back, feeling the weight of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. A woman raised a USB drive high, her voice cutting through the clamor. "Look! USB drives too. Who knows what secrets they hold?" Nearby, chaos erupted as a furious blonde woman cornered a sharply dressed older man. "You low life. Remember our prenup? I'll make sure you lose everything." "Please, baby, I'm sorry," he pleaded, his tone desperate. "It meant nothing." She kept throwing herself at me. I slipped, but only once. "You lying piece of trash!" she screamed, rage spilling over. Rising from the floor, she charged at him, brandishing incriminating photos, her curses ringing out. He stumbled backward before breaking into a full sprint as she gained ground. Elsewhere, a woman sobbed uncontrollably, clutching a photo to her chest while her husband stood silently beside her, his face buried in his hands. Another man thrust a photo at a striking woman, his voice trembling with anger. "You're unbelievable. You've been lying to me all this time. You swore you'd never do a threesome because you wouldn't be with another woman." Her cheeks flamed red as she turned on her high heels and fled, wobbling with every step. In the midst of the uproar, another woman gathered a pile of photos and began shouting names as she stormed through the ballroom. She stopped in front of a bewildered woman, handed her a picture, and watched as realization dawned. Fury twisted the woman's features as she turned toward her husband, photo in hand, her steps quickening as he backed away in panic. This chaotic scene repeated itself across the room, each incident drawing gasps and murmurs from the horrified onlookers. Meanwhile, Valentina, now conscious, sat dazed on the floor, her glazed eyes taking in the turmoil she had orchestrated through her reckless choices. A man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo knelt beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, her voice empty. "I'm Valentina Wright." "Wright?" His brow furrowed. "The Valentina Wright?" She nodded again. "Who are you?" she asked weakly. He pulled out a packet of papers, snapped her photo, and said, "I'm a process server." "You've been served, Valentina Wright." The room fell silent as he continued, his voice cutting like a knife. "These documents outline and substantiate Christopher Wright's adultery allegations in his divorce filing. Enclosed are photos and videos proving her infidelity." He addressed the crowd with calculated precision. "For those who missed the evidence, the divorce filings, publicly available, list every name, date, and place of Valentina's affairs. For a nominal fee, I can provide a link to the complete archive. If you suspect your spouse was involved, I also offer digital evidence packages, priceless in court. Contact me online." With a dramatic bow, he exited, leaving the room in stunned disarray. The fallout was swift and merciless. Valentina collapsed into her friend Serafina's arms, sobbing inconsolably, the divorce papers clutched in her trembling hands. The admiration she once commanded had turned to disdain, pity, and disgust. The weight of her disgrace crushed her like a mountain falling from the sky. "Collect those photos and burn them," Vincent barked at his staff, turning to Margaret, his voice dripping with venom. "Draft a reprimand for Christopher Wright and have his termination ready by Monday." Margaret remained composed. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Harrison." "What do you mean?" Vincent's face was already turning red. "Christopher resigned earlier today. He gave 3 weeks' notice, cleared his desk, and left." "I won't accept his resignation," Vincent roared. "I'll fire him and make sure he's blacklisted." Margaret's expression didn't waver. "That won't work, sir. He met with the chairman, your father, who accepted his resignation. Christopher has already secured a new position with one of our top consulting partners." Vincent's face turned a dangerous shade of crimson as Margaret and her husband exchanged triumphant glances, quietly savoring his frustration. What goes around comes around, and Vincent was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Far away, Christopher Wright was already on the road, cruising south in his custom Range Rover, his route to Dallas, Texas winding through scenic rural landscapes. He intended to enjoy every mile, leaving behind the frenetic city life. He planned to explore charming small towns, indulge in local delicacies, and take the kind of back roads immortalized in country songs. The divorce settlement was simple. Christopher retained his investments and retirement accounts, while Valentina kept the penthouse and her trust fund. The luxury SUV, largely financed by her extravagant spending, was a small but satisfying consolation for him. As the miles stretched behind him, Christopher felt the intoxicating weight of freedom he hadn't experienced in over a decade. The company he had built, Harrison and Son, would likely falter without him. Vincent's incompetence would ensure its demise, while Christopher's new venture, built on innovations he had quietly developed, would thrive. The thought of Vincent's inevitable downfall brought a satisfied smirk to his face. Justice had never tasted so sweet. Meanwhile, Valentina was unraveling back at Serafina's house. She dissolved into tears once more, realizing her carefully rehearsed excuses were futile. She had planned to tell Christopher her affairs were meaningless, mere tools to strengthen their relationship or further their mutual goals. But even she knew how hollow that sounded now. Christopher had been steadfast in his commitment to their marriage, but forgiveness was no longer an option. As Christopher embraced his newfound freedom and brighter future, Valentina faced the wreckage of her choices. Her once glamorous life was crumbling around her, piece by irreparable piece. For months, she had understood that her marriage was damaged, but the sight of their apartment stripped of his belongings drove the truth home with brutal force. She sank to the floor, her sobs raw and unrestrained, condemning herself for the hubris that had brought her to this point. The reasons for her actions lingered in her mind, yet she couldn't find it within herself to believe them anymore. She had never truly anticipated consequences, and even if they came, she had assumed her gentle, naive husband would pardon her. For 4 years, her betrayals had gone unchecked, but now he had destroyed her world in a single night, leaving her to sift through the rubble of her shattered reputation and life. Christopher's past week had been a whirlwind of calculated moves. After setting up his new phone, he discarded the old one, SIM card removed into a slushy street, severing the final connection to his former existence. His move to Texas had been carried out with military precision, every step meticulously planned. Throughout the week, he'd sent a string of emails that detonated like grenades, each one tailored for maximum impact. Each recipient, a spouse, was left grappling with the unraveling of their marriage. The chaos he orchestrated brought a satisfied smirk to his face. Have you ever experienced the sweet taste of perfectly executed justice? It's intoxicating. Serafina's husband had been among the last to receive his email just 2 days before. Christopher couldn't help but chuckle, imagining Marcus's response. Valentina's infidelity was her own undoing, but Serafina's involvement couldn't be overlooked. Serafina's vivid accounts of her escapades, along with her encouragement for Valentina to adopt a similarly reckless lifestyle, had fanned the flames of destruction. 6 days later, Serafina and Valentina found themselves in their shared apartment, now occupied solely by the two of them, as Marcus had expelled Serafina after reading Christopher's email. The email contained 7 incriminating video clips and a damning recording of Serafina and Valentina. In the audio, the two women gleefully detailed their affairs, mocking their oblivious husbands and naming their lovers with cruel precision. Furious, Marcus shared the recording with the wives of nearly every man mentioned in the conversation, most of whom he knew personally. The fallout spread like wildfire across their social circle. Marcus watched with grim satisfaction as the chaos unfolded, knowing that sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, is the only path to justice. Another man named Vincent faced his own reckoning. His father, disgusted by his actions, not only dismissed him from the family business, but also revoked his inheritance. Alongside Vincent, the company's upper management, tarnished by the scandal, was entirely replaced. Vincent's father assumed the role of interim CEO, while Margaret, newly promoted to vice president of talent acquisition, began recruiting top executives from across the globe to rebuild the firm. As for Christopher, his transition continued smoothly. He passed the downtown exit, turned onto Main Street, and caught a fleeting view of the Trinity River as he neared the Dallas Convention Center. Crossing Commerce Street, he reached the luxurious high-rise condo at Fountain Place, a temporary residence provided by his new employer, with 8 months of rent prepaid. Christopher had time to search for his ideal home, one with a spacious yard, mature trees, and room for the dog he planned to adopt. In his mind, he envisioned a fresh start with a partner who valued loyalty and the prospect of building a life together, complete with children. His colleagues had already arranged a welcome barbecue where he'd be introduced as recently divorced, ensuring plenty of opportunities to meet accomplished, single women. Meanwhile, back in New York, the storm Christopher had unleashed continued to escalate. Betrayed spouses retaliated with their own revelations, unearthing even more secrets and intensifying the havoc. Margaret kept Christopher informed of the ongoing turmoil through encrypted messages. As he reflected on the chain reaction he had set in motion, Christopher felt a profound sense of liberation. Far removed from the destruction he had orchestrated, he embraced the peace of his new life in Texas. For the first time in years, he felt truly unburdened and free. The weight of deception had been lifted from his shoulders, replaced by the lightness of truth and justice. At 57, I've learned that some betrayals are so deep, so soul-crushing, that they transform you completely. But what I discovered that night was that sometimes the most devastating betrayal can become the greatest gift of freedom you'll ever receive. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you like this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. What's your experience with situations like this? How would you have handled this at different stages of life?